some ideas about kuzushi. In working with kuzushi, there's a perceptual threshold that we're trying to stay within. And it's what I like to refer to as tactile invisibility. We want the other guy to not perceive what's going on to him as it's happening to him. It's a very subtle level of movement and a subtle level of directionality that we build into our actions, that we employ on our partner, and it takes a while to get the feel of it, but there's some mechanisms that we can tie into that make this easier. If you think about where kuzushi probably came from as its original thinking, it would be the same sort of problem that you would have if you're walking along, or worse yet, you're running along and you step where, you know, there's a pile of leaves and you think that that's a solid ground right there, and you step in a hole. Your body and your whole mechanism of going forward and through space is geared toward there being solid ground. And suddenly when your foot lands, the solid ground isn't there, and whew, you get a big surprise. So it's the failure of perception and for the body to read and predict what's happening that leads to a lot of the reflex action that we think of when we talk about kuzushi, the breaking down of posture and balance. How we do this with another human being is kind of tricky because we're used to human beings. If I'm here with Damon and I'm moving my arm back and forth, he can tell you, he feels all this. He knows what's going on. His body automatically, because from the time we're little tiny creatures until we get to be big, when we encounter other people and we're either doing nice things and shaking hands, or we're handing somebody an object, or we're getting in conflict and we're, you know, like wrestling around or tussling or whatever, our nervous system has learned to read other people and feel what's going on, primarily what's being driven from the upper body and from the arms extending and curling, or some variants or forms. You can feel what's happening. Pretty much extension and curl is the big stuff. He can get a little bit when I have torsion in the shoulders too. But what our bodies are not good at recognizing, what our subconscious and our reflex actions aren't good at picking up on, is what's going on in the core of our body, what's happening right in the center of our body in relation to his body. And we've looked at this before when we talked about opening and closing the hip in relation. So if he has a hold of me, go ahead with two hands, and he just has a solid, stable structure. He's not trying to do anything. And all I do is I'll just arbitrarily close this hip. I'm just turning at the hip socket with no weight on my foot, and then I place my foot down and put weight on it. And my arm's just relaxed. Now, you can see his body begin to distort because it can't not distort. Now, I'm not pushing it over there, but the torsion in my hip is affecting him, and it can't not affect him. It's really odd that way. Similarly, I'll come back off of it. If I have the same relationship and I open the hip and I put weight on it, look at his body start to tilt and go over that way. And he can tell you, did my arm change? Was there any, there's no particular signal coming through his hands that he would get if I were pulling it or pushing it this way or that way. If I leave my arm relaxed and just change the hip socket, that change in my hip, his body has to react to, and it has no signal coming to it to get it ready to react to it. So he's basically just stepped in a hole. Isn't that weird? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the same if he has me with two hands. And arbitrarily, I just open a hip and put weight on that hip and let the body do its normal thing. Every time you open or close your hip, you create a torsion right here in the center of your body that has to be compensated for. When weight goes on that, the whole body's going to turn. But it's not turning by pushing off and driving the turn. It's turning from that coiled action coming right out of the hip. So I'm going to close the hip in this case, put my weight on it, and everything just starts to collapse for him without trying to do anything. The arms are still loose and relaxed. So this starts to become a well-known property. You say, man, I just invoked my hips on him, and it matters not whether I'm holding him or he's holding me. That's relatively neutral. Doesn't really matter. He can do the same thing to me. He's holding on to me, and then he just opens and closes a hip and just puts your weight on that hip. Yeah, right. And now try closing the hip and put weight on that. Yeah, right. As soon as his body weight shifts, the action in my hips has to shift, but I didn't get any signal saying, get ready, we're going to shift our hips now. So the whole system has to maneuver around that point to try to equalize. It's a very interesting effect. One that's less known in the kuzushi world is that the same property occurs for this in our shoulders. So when we think about turning our hand over and we rotate it from the radius ulna, from the elbow socket, we get, I don't know, about 180 degrees of travel from all the way up to all the way down. If we want more rotation, we have to invoke the shoulder. And the shoulder will get us all the way from here to all the way to there. So we basically have, I don't know, a wider range of motion coming out of the shoulder socket. If you relax the arm and just invoke the shoulder, you have a very similar torsioning mechanism, though smaller, that you have with the hip. But because if he's a hold of me, he's already got contact with me, and then I decide I'm going to crank my shoulder over, he can feel that coming. He can do things about that. He can stop it if he wants. Yeah, exactly. And if I think, well, I'm going to turn my shoulder, well, he can stop that. He's got power. The time to invoke that, just like getting ready to put weight on the foot, to put it under load, is just before he gets a hold. So just as he began to grip down, what did I do? I rolled the shoulder in. I turned it all the way in so that as he grips down, he's now got a loaded prospect. He's got something with torsion already built in the shoulder. Now, when I want to invoke that action on him, do I twist? No, 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 I don't want to twist. I want to just relax. Weird, huh? Yeah. I create torsion, he gets a hold of it to try to make a static position, and then my relaxation releases the torsion that's being stored in the shoulder joint. It affects you, but you don't feel it coming. And that's a beautiful form of kuzushi. You can do the same thing if you roll all the way out, by the way. So this time, just before he gets a hold, I'm just going to, again, from the shoulder, torque all the way to the outside, turning it out. There you go. And again, he gets locked down. He's powerful. If I tried to twist against this, he would kill it. I don't. I just relax. And again, it's not as big effect from the out as it is from the in, but it's still pretty useful. So again, just as he gets here, it's rolled out. I relax it. Everything starts twisting, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Weird deal. Weird deal. This one's actually stronger of the two, at least in my body. Maybe your body's different. I give him this torqued position, then I relax. Strange, huh? Mm-hmm. So a new mechanism, or not a new mechanism, but a not well-known mechanism for affecting kuzushi right there.